Hey yo, thanks for coming to mess with us today. And we here with
My name's Jason. Last name's McEmracy.
for sure. And then let's talk about what you do. Talk more about that real quick.
So I do just a lot of community outreach in like Wayne County, pretty specifically. Work in the city of Detroit and like in Downriver, in Dearborn, pretty mostly. I do a lot of what's called climate mitigation, and I try and find a lot of ways that supply chains influence climate change and affect neighborhoods that don't have a lot of like government help. Most recently, I worked with this place called AmeriCorps that partnered up with Wayne State. We did something in the Jefferson Chalmers area where like the CSO, which is like sewage overflow from how old the sewer systems are, is leaking into people's basements. They weren't getting any help from the city, so we stepped in and did some direct action, gave them dehumidifiers, connected them with this place called JEI so that they could get further help with other issues that were going on in the neighborhood, and just try to record and like create some kind of record for people to look back on to see the city's negligence so that we could prevent anything like that from happening in the future.
And you did that in what county?
Wayne County. Pretty specifically, we worked in the Jefferson Chalmers area in Detroit, like right by, if you've ever heard like Yellow Lake Coffee, and Detroit Soul has a location down there as well.
Dang. And what made you want to do this type of work?
Just all the stuff that I saw throughout my life. I grew up in a small town called Allen Parks, like right next to Lincoln Park, Ecorse Rouge, and Dearborn. And kind of a lot of stuff didn't make sense. What I was being told didn't sound like what was actually happening in front of my eyes. And so, after like years and years of digging and engaging, it feels like the only thing that I could do because everything else is just like selling out. Yeah.
For sure. What makes you not want to sell out?
I don't know. I feel like eventually whatever decision you make will come back to bite you. And so if you kind of just like forfeit your virtues and forfeit your soul, somebody's going to take it. And 10 years, 15 years, I don't know, even a year down the line, you're going to realize that you don't have it anymore and you've got nothing to go on. And everybody else will know too.
Hmm. What's something that you think that would make you sell out?
Uh, I guess like a certain amount of like understanding of the control that would come with like whatever selling out in this like case would be. So like I feel like usually that means you get a lot of money at once from somebody that's not super great or something like that. So if I knew that that money could get me to a place where I wouldn't have to like continue to sell out and I could use it to position myself to actually do the things that I want to do, I think I would jump.
And just because you said that the Detroit their sewage, what's the sewage problem? So basically they weren't cleaning the sewage, so that made the sewage system just flood. Is that why like Detroit like they got a lot of floods?
Yeah, big time. That's exactly what it is. I can't remember what the C for CSO stands for, but the group I work with uses that terminology a lot. And basically, what it's combined sewage overflow. So basically, what that means is usually there's like two different sewer lines in cities. More like recently they developed that, so this kind of stuff doesn't happen. And when you have a combined sewage overflow and like a negligent city, what happens is a lot of that sewage doesn't get filtered, it gets clogged up, and these systems are so old, like 100 years old, that all the water just pushes back into people's houses. And then you've got 6 feet of water in your basement, all your stuff gets destroyed, and the structure of your house gets completely destroyed as well. So you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of work to do just because somebody over at the water sewage treatment plant didn't really do their job and they're not getting the money they need to do their job. And we're trying to kind of step in where the city's not stepping in to help fix the problems that are occurring because of their negligence.
All right, I ain't gonna lie. Throw some names out there.
Heck yeah. Like
Throw a
people.
politician name out there. Why is this happening like this?
So actually, the a big part of the program, and this is probably equally as interesting if you ask me, is that we're like specifically not supposed to talk about why the issues happen, right? We're supposed to just jump in, so they don't even really tell us why. But I imagine people who have participated in the city council over the past 20 years are pretty responsible for it. I don't have any like direct evidence of that because they try really hard to cover that up or make it like taboo to talk about. So there's a good chance it has to do with the city council and like the people who are moving here with a lot of money and not a lot of compassion. Kind of like want this to happen because it'll force people out, and then they can more than likely come in and buy the properties and resell them at higher values and completely refurbish everything, you know, but then they don't have to make a deal with the people who are already living there. They just get to kind of push them out. That's my understanding for sure. That's what I've observed in my time there. But yeah, there's no, like, they purposefully make it so that it's super hard for us to name names and point fingers. A part of what we do when we engage with the residents is like talk about how the issues are formed and how we're going to fix them. A really common issue is like, who's responsible for this? And the answer that we're borderline, I wouldn't say we're like forced to give, but it's very heavily implied that we're supposed to say, you know, we don't know, we're just here to help, which I'm sure has to do with saving some face for them.
For sure. What do you think about the gentrification going on in Detroit?
I think that I'm really, really proud of the people who have been residents of Detroit for the past, you know, eternity, essentially. I think that there's a huge push by people who are from New York, Rochester, LA, who are coming in here with a lot of money that they got from there and not a whole lot of good intentions for the people that are already there. But what's cool about it, I guess if you could even say it's cool, is that there's a very like robust community that exists that's really, really hard to like fool into believing that these are good intentions. Because I don't believe gentrification's ever a good thing. I think it's a violent thing. I think it's an attack on native Detroiters, and I really, really hope that I can, you know, do something within this world more than just the public service, more than just like the air purification systems and the dehumidifiers, to kind of make it so that those people don't have the ability to just choke hold the people that already live here and withhold social services that they are responsible for providing if they want to develop the community. And they use that word a lot, develop, but it's not developing like a photo from, you know, film. You got nothing and then you get this beautiful picture. It actually feels like the opposite. It feels like it's undeveloping so that they can create a blank slate and do whatever they want with it without having to acknowledge the work that's already been done.
Who are some people that's working in Detroit right now that's other than you, your organization, that you think are just doing the thing?
Doing the thing. I think there's a lot of like urban farms around that are doing some really cool stuff. I'd like to make honorable mention to Black to the Land Coalition. I think that they do some really phenomenal work outside of just feeding people who are in need, also educating people on why they're even in need in the first place, and talking about, a lot of people refer to Detroit as a food desert. And the rhetoric I'm familiar with that is completely whitewashing what's going on as a food apartheid, is like purposefully inaccessible to buy groceries, to be able to transit like through buses, and like the lack of cars that people can get, you know, the lack of affordable insurance to get to the stores in the first place, to just be able to have your basic needs. And I think that there's a lot of change that happens within that understanding. And so Black to the Land is one of my favorites for sure. And if I can go like a little bit further south to Dearborn, I work with this collective called Return Collective that's specifically looking at how the supply chains from grocery stores to like food suppliers to even like medical facilities kind of help create this sort of apartheid that is starting to stretch out of Detroit into any community that's not like fully assimilated, if you will, into the American lifestyle.
Out of curiosity, guns. What's your opinion on the guns?
So, my personal opinion, I've been doing a lot of research lately. I grew up kind of in a household that was like, no guns, we don't need guns, it just creates more problems. But that was a very white thing. I grew up in Allen Park, which is totally, like, used to be a sundown town, absolutely, for sure, and has since not been able to sustain that because everybody kind of figured it out and got hip to it. And so based on like my understandings and research now, I think that anybody who has a gun probably has it because they feel some kind of oppression. And so I think that anybody who has a gun should be educated, should be safe about gun use, but also that it's kind of the only thing keeping from these people from doing worse to the community.
I get you. Do you believe Trump is going to do that constitutional gun law thing?
I haven't heard about it yet. Would you?
So it's basically like if I got my CPL, like I got a Michigan CPL, but if I go to New Jersey or certain states, I get locked up if I was carrying there. You got to get a specific license for that state, and then it's
Interesting.
only for that state. So then Trump said he's gonna make a constitutional law because like right to bear arms, it should be in all states. So he
Interesting.
said he's gonna make it in all states. You think he's gonna do that?
I think that I don't really trust most of what comes out of people's mouth during speeches, especially in the political world, like right or left, Dem or Republican, no matter what. So I think that I would probably have to see the proposal, and see the wording, and then maybe see like who's putting money into the bill, because I feel like that specifically draws a little bit clearer of a picture, because they've got a bunch of really smart people writing their speeches, and they like study their personalities and their mannerisms to make it so they seem as honest as possible in those scenarios and say what most people want to hear. So I think I just would have to learn a little bit more, but I think that dude has been successful in kind of like steamrolling a lot of bills in the past, so it would not surprise me if it went through.
Do you where do you get your news from? Where do you get your information from?
I get it from a lot of different places. I try to make sure that it comes from some sort of like research lab, if you will, that has some sort of credentials, like from academia, I guess, or some kind of like bureaucratic regulatory agency. I've been reading a lot from Al Jazeera right now, which is like a Middle Eastern news source that pays attention to like international affairs. And I also like Planet Detroit. They're a local paper and local news source that does like some independent research. And yeah, those are like the two main ones that I go for right now.
You have you ever traveled out of the? Before you said you traveled out of the country. What have you traveled out of the country for, and where to?
I've been not very many places, to be honest with you. I've only ever really been to Canada, like Windsor, and then London, which is like halfway to Toronto. And I did it because I knew a girl out there. Just went to kind of go be friends with her, if you will. And
Giggity.
yeah, big time. And I was thinking about getting like a green card / dual citizenship out there. But I kind of went out there and realized it's not so different from here, so it wouldn't really make a difference in my life.
Hmm. Understood. I ain't gonna lie, as a kid, just a funny thing. I actually thought that was like London.
Yeah.
Like, cause you always see it on the news too. It'd be like, oh,
Really?
London is right there. Oh, they talking England? Wait, that messed me up so much as a kid.
Yeah, definitely. Same here. Especially when I talk about it now, too. I gotta be like London, Ontario, because every time I say London, people are like, holy crap, you've been to Britain. I've never been across the sea before.
Where somewhere do you think you'd like to visit outside of the country?
Um, that's a phenomenal question. Dang. I don't do a ton of research on it, but I think Thailand would be pretty solid. I know that they have like a really, really robust like tourist culture, so they're like prepared for it. It wouldn't be so much of a big deal if I showed up there, because they kind of want people to come out there. Like I wouldn't be imposing super a lot. Um, and then honestly, like South Korea, just because of the art and like how like their government and their citizens are interacting right now. I'm not sure if you heard about like the government coup that they tried to do. They tried to like declare martial law so that they could militarize South Korea, and like the government could borderline take control of everybody's decisions. They'd have people sit with like AKs on the street, making sure everybody's falling in line, and the citizens currently still are protesting that and kind of making it so that their president can't just take over all of a sudden.
I heard that the military just ran it for like 5 minutes or some shit like that, or like an hour or something like that.
Big time, yeah. They have these people called white helmets that are basically like their version of like, everybody refers to them as neo-Nazis, like the fucking, I can't even remember what their name is, which is really funny, but basically just like people that do the bidding of the bureaucracy and make sure that people stay as confused as possible about their power and the truth of what's going on in their communities.
All right, let me ask you. Let's get to the big shit.
Let's go.
What you think about the black people?
In general?
Yeah, there's your opinion on the state of black people. I
This-
think it was a Family Guy thing. Like, I like Family Guy because they kept it so fucking raw one time.
Big
He was
time.
like, okay, I'm gonna go to the black neighborhood and say the you know what word and see what happens.
Jesus.
And then no, he said that, and then he went there and he said they gave me a crown and everything. Your culture is confusing. Your culture is damaged. And I was like, okay, I respect him for being honest. He said your culture is damaged. I was like, okay, I respect it.
That's really wild. That's a bold statement to make, too. I personally think every culture is damaged. In the state of the world right now, I think that if you're not damaged, then you've got maybe some soul searching to do. But as far as like the black community goes, my experience with the black community is pretty specific to Detroit, a little bit of like LA,
but I've found more like family in the city than I had growing up. I found more connection in the city than I have in my entire life, and I feel like I found my actual person in the city, and I know that this is the most black neighborhood, most black city in America, and so based off of that understanding, based off of how Detroit treated me, I'm like absolutely in love with the black culture and black people in general. But I understand that not anybody at all, not any group of people is, just one entity all at the same time. And so I'm going to be wrong so much even in just saying that, because, it's this huge fractal. It's not just this one united thing, this one like single-celled organism that everybody's the same. I feel like
we do it on a couple occasions. On a couple occasions we do that shit. On a couple
real.
occasions we do that shit. A couple occasions we just like, nah.
That's real. So I think my experience has been almost entirely positive, even though I was kind of grown up and socialized to have racist tendencies and racist opinions. It wasn't very hard for me to break through that because of how Detroit treated me. And
what was the racist opinions and tendencies?
So growing up, pretty much, everybody just in school would have this like us or them mentality, like no matter what. And like even though I would get picked on for being like a redhead and for being like Polish and stuff, like the uniting factor would always be like disdain for people that weren't like you, right? And so like even people that would bully me would end up like trying to be my friend because I was white, so they would like make fun of you for like the Polish element, or they would make fun of you for being like a redhead. But then, it's okay because you're white. I was just kidding. Like, it's totally fine, right? And so that just kind of, it permeated into everybody. And there was a period of time, specifically in Allen Park. When
you went to Detroit schools? Or?
I went to Allen Park, which is like, it's just like 15 minutes south.
I get you.
And that was like pretty much a sundown town from like the 50s to the 80s.
When you say sundown town, what's a sundown town?
Sundown town is a term that I understand as like towns where once the sun goes down and it's like nighttime, if you weren't white, you're going to get profiled by the police. You're going to get taken to jail, and you're probably not going to get due process or very good treatment at all. And like people made a point for it to be like that. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Howell. Or like
KKK.
Exactly. That's where it kind of comes from. That's where it comes from for sure. That's like they did sundown towns on purpose as like an effort to like save white neighborhoods, right? And so when I was growing up, that culture still existed in like vague notions. The people in power still were kind of doing that stuff, but they couldn't so much because they were losing their ability to use it to create this false unity in people that was just centered around violence.
I'll say one thing for surely over on this side. My grandma used to always say this. Like I feel like in the black community, we got like older people that's just like still keeping that shit going, and then a few of us who kind of keep it, we trying to peep it, but then most of it we like getting rid of that shit. It's like what's the she said, don't bring home no white girl. Whatever you do, don't bring home no white girl. Yeah. And I was like, what? She's not white. Do her hair need a perm?
Right. That's
no.
real.
And I was like, not white. And I was like, ah, damn.
That's real.
So now I was like, what? I remember I told her, I was like, Grandma, that's racist. And I was like, he's like, they saying it about you?
That's real.
So then I just remember that's the thing that I got, the racist thing that I got as a kid. I just remember that.
I think that like that really weird thing that I was talking about that happened when I was in like middle school and like young high school is like, and this is super backwards, right? This doesn't really 100% make sense to me, but it makes sense like materially in reality. It's like, that's how we broke it. Like that's how we broke the dogma, is because like, I had all of these like prejudices that I was taught that were like, imposed on me by my grandma, by, my papa and stuff like that. And like 2 generations later, you don't really know why. And then we had school of choice. So we would have some kids from Detroit, we'd have some kids from Ecorse, we'd have some kids from all over that weren't white come to our school and go to school there. And what made us get along is that we thought it was so funny. We were like, what is this? Like, I don't even believe this. Why is this bouncing around in our heads? And so like the little tropes and the little prejudices we had, we almost laughed at them together, right? Because it was like, yeah, man, I don't believe this at all. Why has this been preached to me my whole life? And then we kind of used that as comedy. And what's really interesting is it brought some of us together, and it made it so that stuff went away. But some people started to like, not get that it was a joke, like went over their head. And then you got people who like become racist because of that. Mostly like pretty much entirely white folks.
Yeah, I remember it was a moment. I came from Detroit schools to Ann Arbor schools, and then like I don't know, I was like saying you from Detroit, like they always thought I'd be tough or something like that.
Right.
And then I started bitching up, and I was like, no, I'm not tough at all. And like that was like a funny moment. I understand what you're saying. Like
Totally.
we realized like even like the basic thing they say, like the Asian people are so good at math or something like that.
Yeah.
You see an Asian girl just struggling with that math homework or something like that, or so they're just small things like that. We realize, oh, this shit is not true.
Big time. It's humanizing, right? It's super humanizing. I like that. But then you've got the people who like, you know, they miss the point and then they keep driving that joke home even when someone's uncomfortable and it's actually affecting them, right? And that's when it's an issue. And that's like, it's so crazy that some of us took it and we made gold out of it, and then some of us took it and we made coal out of it, you know?
For sure. All right, and then you got the community work. You say you grew up in Island Park?
Yeah. I was there from like 1997, which is when I was born, till
Damn.
2015.
You old as fuck.
I'm pretty old. I know I don't look like it, but I'm counting on that to stick around, you know?
Wait,
I'm
how
trying
old
to
are
look young. 27, turning 28 later.
Oh, damn, Unc.
Yeah, big time unk status.
All right, but yeah, you said something about LA. What was it about LA? You give me the LA vibe, like you say energy a lot, like.
Yeah, so I just went out there for the first time a couple weeks ago. My uncle's been out there since the 80s. He's in a neighborhood called Los Feliz, which used to be like really, really heavy Latin gang activity and stuff like that, and now it's being gentrified like crazy. And so he's been there the whole time. He saw it go down. He hates it. He talks shit out loud a lot about it, you know. And I love to make people uncomfortable in that manner, you know. You go out and you talk shit about the people who are causing problems. They can't really do anything because it's your right, you know.
So I say their names on camera.
Big time.
Say their names on camera.
I gotta do some research and make sure that they're not gonna slap cuffs on me for it though, because I've signed a lot of NDAs in my life and I don't remember all of them, and I definitely have fucked over some big business owners.
Name drop them. Really, I feel like even with the podcast game, I'm learning as I go. Really, I'm learning that because I'm really doing this to educate the people.
Cool.
It's really about the people that endorse the politicians. Like even you said, the people with the money behind it.
Big time.
That's what I'm realizing it's about. So it's really not even about the person. It's about the person
Behind
endorsing these people and the organizations. And it's so crazy wicked. Because some of it's so wicked. They say, oh yeah, he got like 6 donors, 6 endorsers. And I was like, who are they? Oh yeah, they're private. They don't want to be known. I was like,
I
that's
can
that
name
shit.
drop a couple.
Huh?
I got 2 I can name drop.
Who?
So I was a part of this group called Comrades in Coffee, which, you know, it's a funny name, especially given the political climate right now. But what we did is we tried to unionize Great Lakes Coffee Roasting Company, if you ever heard of them. They were on Woodward in Detroit for a while, right across the street from the Garden Bowl.
That sounds like some old white people money. Like I own all the coffee beans in Michigan, like type shit.
Absolutely.
Is that really it?
Yeah, so the couple who owns the company, which is surprisingly still in business, is called the Miracles, right? Greg and Lisa Miracle. Greg and Lisa Miracle are really tied into the church community in like West Bloomfield in that area, which I don't know if you know anything about West Bloomfield, but there's a lot of political connotations right now in that area, and they're not good. None of them are good. And so the Miracles legally changed their last name to Miracles to seem palatable to the, you know, Christian community out there. And so they're already fake immediately because they changed their name just to look good, you know, in the eyes of all of these faithful people. And we unionized against them after COVID because they took that PPE money the PPE money that the government was giving out, and they didn't give any back to us. All of the baristas and the cooks were getting COVID in and out, and so they unionized. And I had previously worked for them and tried to do that on my own, but it didn't work out, so I quit, you know. I was the delivery driver. I loaded up all of their stock on one of the busiest days, and then I turned my phone off and went to sleep and didn't show up to work, so they would take a big hit. And then I, you know, quit. And so a couple years down the line, my friends were working there, and they unionized, and Great Lakes, Greg and Lisa Miracle, fought us tooth and nail to make sure that we didn't get any benefits and that we looked just like, you know, ungrateful employees, like ungrateful, like young baristas who like didn't know what they were talking about. We ended up succeeding. They had to close down all of their physical locations, so they don't exist as a cafe anymore. They only supply coffee beans and like cans of cold brew to like stores. And so there was this one location, even in like Rivertown Market downtown, if you're familiar, that they just had to completely leave behind, and they hired a new coffee company to take over. And so those people absolutely, I know for a fact, are tied in to what's going on politically. They have a huge part in siphoning money from the Detroit community and filtering it into West Bloomfield and the richer white neighborhoods across 8 Mile up north. And another company that I'm currently suing, actually, because I was in a car accident in Detroit at this place called the Red Hook Greenway, which is off East Jefferson as well. Car crashed through the front of the building and hit me and my buddy while we were working behind the counter. Threw us back about 15 feet. And what do you know? The
Sound like
first
some
thing that
Detroit
the
shit.
owners do, big time, it was super
Cars go
crazy.
through doors and windows and shit like, I'm gonna drive through this bitch.
Hell yeah.
Like, I ain't gonna lie, I travel out of the country with the camera shit, and then when people start saying crazy shit like that, I be the only motherfucker believing, like, just because I live in Detroit, cars go through baristas
People will
and
do it.
Coney Islands and shit.
Yeah.
They'll be like,
What's crazy about it is the lady who did it, I just served her coffee, so we were cool. Like, she was cool. She was like a 78-year-old lawyer in the neighborhood. She just lost control of her car. She didn't even know
Oh, for real?
what happened. She thought she was pressing the brake, yeah.
oh my goodness,
And
nah.
what's super crazy,
I see some most of the wildest shit, like road rage, angry shit, like in Detroit. I'd be like, damn, so everybody just on 10. Why everybody on tip?
big
I
time,
need some love in this bitch. Like,
truthfully.
I be like,
That's-
I be on tip. Like, I came here at Coney Island one day, and then boom, the behind the counter just start beating on this one girl outside. I'm like, damn.
At work too, right?
Yeah, at work. And I was like, damn.
It's like that. People are definitely, I mean, that's like the nature of the city. Everybody's been like neglected for so long on like a social level, right? Like on a fundamental, like what your government's supposed to give to you as a human being. These people don't get it. And
Do you
so this
think?
is how
Do you
it
think it's a
articulates.
people thing? When does it? Do you think it's a people thing or it's a government thing, or do you think it's like? What do you think it's all
I
about?
think they weave quite a bit. I think mostly it's the government, and I only say that because like a lot of the reason why people go in is to influence policy and stuff like that. And in Detroit specifically, the way that policy has prevailed is to kind of like make people poorer and to make people more desperate. Unless, you know, you like work for Rocket, or if you work for UWM, or if you work for these big companies that are like responsible for siphoning the money and then gentrifying the areas.
Okay, I'm with you, my white brother. I'm with you, my cocoa bean brother.
Hell yeah.
Look, I'm with you. But look, I be around these rappers, and then I promise you, I talk to them about this. Like, I say the little I spiel that you be saying,
Yeah.
and then I be like, all right, so look, when you make a whole bunch of money, will you stay in Detroit and give back, or are you just gonna take all your resources and everything and just leave?
Right.
And then it's like, nigga, I'm gone. I'm like, nigga, I'm leaving. So then, like, how do you get past that? Because you gotta get even the stigma, even like the people. Some people are making it out for surely. Some people are making it for surely.
Definitely.
But then once they make resources, once they get enough, they go live in Bloomfield.
Right.
The moment they get a chance to go to Bloomfield, they go to Bloomfield.
Big time.
So then, how can you get past that stigma? How do we get past that?
I think the way that I could maybe answer that without thinking about it too hard, just right away, is by like creating like incentives for the future. Because I think the reason a lot of rappers do that is because, especially rap now, but ever since the 90s, it's become kind of like a, I don't want to say a psyop because that's a buzzword, but more or less it's been like a psyop for a while, right? Rap has existed to be a filter for media, especially black media, because it's black music. And so I think that using rap for the past 20, 30 years to create this, like, I got to get on top, I got to be better than everybody. It's the same thing that happened with Wall Street, right? It's the same thing that got white people to do the same exact thing in the 20th century. It's just constant competition, constant one-upping, constant, like, hyper-machismo energy. I got to be the best, I got to be the baddest, I got to be the hardest.
But not even in rap music though. I see it everywhere.
Even
Like-
in rock music.
Like, now I'm talking about, like, I'm saying, like, a girl, she grew up in Detroit her whole life. And then, boom, the moment she become a doctor, mortgage,
Right.
already over there.
True.
All her money just to spend, just to go all the way over there.
Real.
So I feel like, even that mindset, I'm like,
It pervades even
I think
rap.
even you just staying there, I think means 1,000 times more. Because you got to think, if you got all that money, you got to think property tax, you got to think your barber, you're going to pay your person to do your hair more.
Yeah.
You got to have a person to do your shoes. You got to have a tailor your suits, like stuff like that.
Totally.
I think all that stuff just comes in the hand.
Yeah, that's true. I think so too. I think maybe that's like what that incentive would be in the community to keep people there is like I think the problem right now is that you got so many people making a little bit of money, then a few people making a lot of money, like a lot of money, and these are the people that control what's built and like what's passed, what's regulated. And so there's like the only path to any kind of comfort for the people who aren't making a lot of money is to, sell out, like we were talking before. It's the only path to like healthiness. And so I think like creating just some sort of like, I don't even want to say like middle class, because I don't really believe that that's like the solution, but just like a more accessible path to comfort, a more accessible path to like having all of your boxes ticked at the end of the day so you can go to sleep fed and loved and warm. I think that's what is the most important, because I feel like the reason people are so desperate to get that mortgage to move out to Bloomfield is because there's just not really a clear path to it in Detroit. You have to already have buku bucks to even get a studio and to live there for a year. You've got to have like $50,000 to spend, not even to save. You got to have that much just to spend, and that's not even including your food. That's not even
In
including
Detroit?
your doctors. Yeah, I feel like
You talking about downtown? Or you talking about
honestly anywhere, because downtown definitely is
Downtown is
it's
like
the worst, right?
But like I don't know, I see like Detroit, they got all the cheapest shits.
If you go to
like-
LA even right now, it's not too much different. Like there's
LA?
Yeah, believe it or not, the prices are pretty. Yeah, I mean the fires might change that, because that
They
just
look at us like goofballs. I say you can buy a house in Detroit for surely
Oh,
for 10 bands, 20 bands.
Yeah,
You cannot do that shit in LA.
you're gonna have to do a lot of work in Detroit for sure.
Oh, for the
sure.
20 bands? Oh, you talking about like the sewer shit? The basement might flood?
Yeah,
Like for sure.
the infrastructure is gonna be pretty bad too.
Structure.
like-
But I'm saying you can get something good for 20. 20 for surely.
I think you're right. But
20.
if you looked at plots of land in LA, pretty much the same, and you're going to end up spending
you
a
got?
similar amount of money too. But they also pay more a lot out there. Their
Yeah.
minimum wage has been 15 for the past 10 years at least. We're just at 12 right now.
Let me ask you this. I've been talking to the realtors out there, and they really said, so now we got a whole bunch of houses out in Detroit, but the only thing about it, let's say if you fix 6 houses up in Detroit, boom, all right, now you ready to make your profit? How are you going to get somebody to stay in Detroit?
Right.
That's the problem they got right now.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that, like, with these farms that are being developed because of food, I think that might be one of the biggest things is people have to drive all over just to go to the grocery store. And some of the grocery stores don't even really have good stuff. A lot of that stuff has been sitting in a semi, in a freezer for like 3 weeks, driving from California, driving from Idaho, driving from, the Plain States just to give us our food.
I may be biased, but like they got that Glory Market,
Yeah.
but then is Glory Market bad?
It's only one, though, There's only like...
You know what I'm talking about, Woodward.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
They got Glory Market. Oh, what else they got? What else we got?
They got Rivertown. I know they got Rivertown right
We
next
got
to downtown.
it's fucked up because all the spots I'm saying is like cheap spots, but like, bro, we got these, maybe because I just grew up on these bitches so much, like Audis.
Yeah,
But
that's
then,
true.
like, we ain't got no like expensive, like
Well,
Whole Foods
Aldi
bullshit.
is interesting, right? Because Aldi, do you know who owns Aldi? All the
Who?
way out in Europe. I think that's like, it's not the Netherlands, but it's one of those like Eastern European countries. It's like Denmark, I'm pretty sure, owns Aldi. So the reason Aldi can even come out here and build those stores is because they're getting like incentives to do so. And they're also using that money to fund politicians all over that keep oppressing people, that keep making it so it's very, very hard for people to exist and to grow and to find comfort. And so what, like brands like Aldi kind of create a stasis. It seems like a solution because it's cheap food, it's accessible, and it's around, right? It's actually there, it's actually here. But at the end of the day, they're doing the same thing that those politicians are doing. They're taking your money and they're putting it to your enemies, right? So you get something out of it, but then you kind of become dependent on somebody who wants to just step down on you. And so I think that it's great that they exist, but there's like a long-term plan that they are not telling us, and they're pretty clever about it.
What's the or did you go to college for any of this shit?
I went to Wayne for a couple years for environmental science, but I found out through a lot of people who graduated with those degrees that what you end up doing is just lying for big companies about their like emissions and their outputs. So you kind of sell out, right? And you not only are selling out, but you're harming people, with your research, with your lied research.
Has nothing to do with nothing. I'm trying to fuck this one bitch. She got an environmental science degree. How do you think I can get her?
Oh, dude, talk about going to a zero waste store. Talk about
Going to a zero waste store?
yeah, zero waste store where you like get like your own fucking like containers and you put your shampoo in it and conditioner. You straight up wouldn't even have to go back. If she saw like a mason jar and you're like, oh yeah, that's my conditioner, I don't like to waste plastic, she will be on her knees, I promise. Super quick.
I got you. I'm on your ass.
Hell yeah. And I mean, if you mean it and then you end up doing it for real, then that's bonus points too. But that's a very good intro for it. It would definitely be a good segue.
Got you. And then, so you say you went to 2 years to Wayne State for environmental stuff, and then that was it?
Yeah, and then I didn't really I went to Henry Ford for like half a year after that, and Dearborn, the community college that's now just like a certified college. And I just really didn't like the vibe. Like, the classrooms didn't feel like I was going to get anything out of it. It kind of just felt like high school again, where they just want to give you a good grade or whatever and push you through. So I stopped going there, but I use like academic journals. Yale has free classes online that you can just kind of take for yourself and just get information. And so I do a lot of reading on that. I have a lot of friends who are journalists.
So you sound like a person that just, you want to keep educating yourself, though.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes too much. I gotta fucking slow down and actually retain some of the information.
Understood. Well, sound like you trying to say the word. Don't sell out.
At least just here, you know. This is my world.
Like, I ain't gonna lie, I tell people like I'm a little bit like, once I get to Detroit, like everything else is like, fuck it. Like Detroit, Ipsy.
That's all you need, really.
Yeah, really. And then everything else is like, yeah, like chill out with all the racists like surrounding, because that's like half the goddamn battle. Like, and it's so crazy for me to even say this, because I've traveled with the camera. It's crazy how you realize when you travel, it's all the same shit.
Yeah.
They got all the black people, all the like Latinos, all the like whatever you want to call the minorities in one spot.
Yep.
And this spot is Southeast Detroit.
Yep.
And then just racist.
I agree.
Land, farmland. You might get like one little drop, like a Flint or something like that, but like, nah, like.
Super true.
And then that's like all it is, like.
Big time. And then down here too, you got all the factories. You got the Marathon plant that's been giving 1 in 10 people down the block from it cancer for the past 50 years. Like,
but even then, you said it's like a sundown town. I was like,
yeah, which is crazy because you just lose, right? You have to stay where it hurts, you know, your lungs. And if you try and save your lungs, you're risking your body, you know, because people are going to try and fuck with you because.
Yeah, that's just like, even in Chicago, you leave that little bit of Chicago, it's like I don't know. That was a crazy thing. I just realized
it is really gnarly, right? It's like that's what I mean. I feel like that's the government starts it, and then people kind of like they can't help but follow along with it, right? They set it up so that you all live like this, so that stuff like would happen, you know, so that we're isolated, so that people can ruminate on these kind of like false notions that lead them to be racist, and then embolden their own like racism because they think it's righteous. And it comes from the fact that nobody really has to naturally interact because the way the neighborhoods are built, the way the roads are built, the way that the stores are built, you kind of don't have to leave. And if you do, there's this danger almost. You have to permeate, you have to code switch just to survive in these places. And so that's why I feel like it starts with the policy. And I do think people do play a role, but I feel like it's like 75% government, 25% people just kind of being desperate.
What do you think about felons? How do you think we can make life easier for felons? Like people that have been to jail or prison or have a record?
I think, surprisingly, one of the good things I have to say about AmeriCorps is that it felt like it provided a decent path for people who have been in prison before, especially for like felony charges. I met a few people in there who like were in jail or were in prison before. They ended up becoming my good friends. And growing up, like everybody referred to me as this like super quiet, super timid, like sweetheart little boy, you know, like fucking redheaded stepchild stuff. And not in a million years do I think anybody would picture me and these people getting along. Nobody in a million years would picture like there would be a mesh between me and somebody who's been in prison before, right? And I think that like just that kind of exposure and like having programs that exist, hopefully not like instituted by the federal government, but I understand why to start they would have to be the regulatory agencies. And like having paths to careers and jobs and community engagement, such as like the urban farming or such as like new grocery stores that are actually robust and like have a decent amount of money going into them. I think that would help kind of just recreate some kind of normalcy, because in my opinion, if you have felony charges, you probably had a pretty wild life that like led you to get into those situations. Whatever experiences and circumstances that you had that led you to become felonious, like probably are pretty good reasons, you know. And I think people's perception of it is that people like don't care and that's how they end up in prison. But I think usually like whatever you end up doing, you know, to get yours that leads you to going into prison is probably like, if you looked a little bit closer and were a little bit more honest from the outside, you would understand that that almost wasn't a choice. That was like a forced hand. And so I think that creating that conversation long term, and like creating a space for people to witness and like study and organize, I think that's the best way to do it. So they're creating jobs, creating like paths to rehabilitation would be really phenomenal, but in an honest way, because especially in Michigan, we're like in the Stone Ages when it comes to that kind of conversation. People are super quick to just say buzzwords or to become a trope or to fall back into like racist ideation or like us versus them or classist ideation. I think we just need to make it so it's harder for people to do that, you know. Put more information out there so you sound stupid when you talk like that, you know. So the people from Howell, people from Traverse City, people from fucking like northern Michigan, like, it doesn't even come across at all. Like there's no place for those words to go. It just falls into nothing because we have all this evidence that that's just not true.
You say your people hang out with Big Meech?
Yeah. Well, my aunt was, she was like kind of tied up into that world, and so were my uncles, to be honest. But my aunt was a black woman girl, you know, and my uncles are white dudes, and she was adopted.
You have what?
Family. My aunt's a black woman, and my uncles are white, but they were both, all three of them were like...
You got black people in your blood?
Yeah. Well, not blood, but adopted. So, I mean, it's blood now. I love them to death, but...
Yeah, I get you.
It's not plasmatic, right?
I was like, oh, shit. You're gonna pull like a reverse Drake. One of the kids is gonna pop out black one day. You gotta trust your lady.
That'd be wild.
That'd be like a fucked up.
Especially looking like me, right? They would be like, how the fuck? I would become a...
I wouldn't trust my girl. Like, every girl I get with, I tell her that shit. I was like, yeah, I love you. Like, we can do all that lovey-dovey shit. Like, I'm getting every baby tested.
That's true.
Like, I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, I just, like, that's just me. Like, love me while I'm damaged.
Truthfully. That's super true. I don't blame you for that. The world's crazy. That's probably the best way to go about it.
But basically, yeah, let's talk about Black History Month.
Sure.
Shoot, what do you think about Black History Month?
I think Black History Month is a phenomenal opportunity for people who like are otherwise intimidated by understanding the culture to get into it and to get some truth out of it. You know, I think there's also opportunities for people to like kind of exploit blackness, but as with everything, you know.
All right, for sure. What's the biggest Black history fact that you know that you found out? You was like, what?
So I didn't know. I was talking to this one friend of mine who ended up giving me a book that was a biography by Malcolm X. It was huge. It was almost the size of like a Bible. And I was reading it and chatting with him over the course of a couple of weeks, and he told me about how Malcolm X was initially radicalized when he was very young because his father lived in Lansing and was like attacked by a mob, a racist mob essentially, and they like beat him to death and put him on the train tracks to get ran over by like the next train that came through. And that was one of the things that made Malcolm like extremely active in a direct way too. He didn't cut corners, you know, he's very honest about his emotions and he's very calculated, you know. And so I think that understanding that and like how close in time that happened, this was only like 60 or so years ago, not very long ago at all. I think that it kind of explains the relationship that Michigan has to itself. Like how we were talking earlier about how it seems as though like the minority culture is condensed into Southeast Michigan and it's the blackest city in America, but we don't realize that like right outside of it, like many historical things happen, and that's why there continues to be this battle to like permeate across the whole states. And that's why the west side of Michigan seems to have a lot of money and a lot of control, and the southeast side is super contained and like it almost seems like constantly mitigated by the powers that be. It ties directly into the fact that in Howell, the KKK was formed, which is the most notorious white supremacist organization in history. That happened here. Like that happened not too far away from Detroit. And so that coupled with Malcolm X's father's death, I think it draws a very clear line to defining the relationship that actually exists in an honest way without sugarcoating it or without making it seem as though it's, not bad, because it's awful. It's actually extremely terrible, but it's constantly covered up.
Let me ask you this, as a white person, it's gonna be good. All right, what do you think black people should do with the N-word?
Whatever you want, honestly, whatever helps. I think that the reclamation has been an extremely effective way to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Create like meaningful change, right? Because
You think they should dead it? Like, just dead it? Because you got, like, I'm telling you, you got even black people. That's why you said, when you said, like, oh, you gonna have people, I'm gonna be wrong either way. You're right. Like, even me, I'm gonna be wrong either way. Because you got black people that be like, don't call me that, young brother. I'll be like, nigga. Like, that's how I'll be like, what? You got black people that say, now we gotta stop calling each other that. Don't call me that. Call me your brother. I was like, you got some people that own it and be like, I'd rather own it. I'm on that side.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, right? I mean, I have the obligation also to agree with the people who don't want to be called that as well, because that's my position all the time, is that I'm not going to ever say it. It's not that I can't, it's that I won't, right? And so I think that I have respect for both sides, but I end up aligning with you more, and I'll tell you why. Because I, my whole life, have been trying to get people to stop calling me a ginger, right? I think that people are like, oh, it's innocent, it's not such a bad term. And I'm like, yeah, not yet. Like, that's how this works. Like, me telling you not to say it and you saying it anyways, that's how I get into a bad spot. That's how people like me get into a bad spot, And
That is
so that's up to me.
craziest thing. Like, that's like, I ain't gonna lie, being a black person, hearing, like, white people go through that type of shit. Like, because you gotta understand, from a black perspective, it's like, y'all white.
Exactly.
Like, we get to a certain point where we start realizing about Jewish people, but, like, even after that, it's like, y'all white. It's like hair color. Like, just see how petty y'all is over hair color.
Truthfully, yeah.
I'd be like, that's a thing. Like, even out of boss, my boss at Domino's, he was you don't like saying gingers.
You can go ahead and say
I don't know what it is, but like the red hair color,
Yeah.
he had a red hair color, and it was like, yeah, they called me. I got bullied for this, and I was like, you got bullied for that?
It's wild, right?
I was like, no, wait, do they bully everybody? Do they bully blondes and shit like that?
Not really. Like, if it's blonde, I feel like if you have auburn hair or blonde hair, you're like fucking like ideal, right? And so like you'll get like, oh, like stupid blonde trope if you're a girl, but like that's pretty dead. Like, if you say that, you sound dumb, right? And like if you like, there is not really like a slur for people with brown hair. Like, it doesn't exist because they're so normal, right? In the eyes of this like white supremacist structure, it's like the most normal kind of person that exists. So there isn't even like a slur for it.
So now I was wondering about that shit. Like, that shit just blew my mind.
It's super
Like, that blows our minds to hear y'all say that shit. Like, if you say that to like a regular black person, we're probably gonna look at you like. That's like saying like, hey, don't call me clear fingernails.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it sounds like.
That's interesting. Like, that's totally real too. It's ridiculous. That's why I don't mind when you say it, right? Because you're not saying it to come at me and demean me. You're just like, this is an explanation.
White people do white people like that for sure.
Big time. And that's how it was. You remember that episode of South Park in like 2008 where it was about gingers? That's when it started.
Oh, for real?
It's crazy. I didn't get it ever before that. I was in middle school and that episode came out, and then everybody was like, "Oh, I get a chance to be a dick. I'm gonna be a dick."
Let me ask you this: Black History Month we got for Black Talk. It's the what do you think about white trash? What do white people consider white trash?
So my understanding of white trash is usually people who are like in trailer parks and like have the southern accent. That's like most often how I see it perpetuated, how I see it defined, and so it's like. That couples in a lot of stuff, right? You think about like Eminem, Kid Rock, those personalities, which is crazy how different they are, right? Because they're both considered white trash, but one of them like owns it and like uses it to like reinforce racist notions and like, kind of like make it a trope and pander, like radio country music type shit. But then you got Eminem, who's like the opposite and like uses it to like be relatable and to like integrate cultures. Like him and Dr. Dre changed fucking music for sure. Nobody can deny that. And it's because he used it in a different way, right? So I think white trash can be really, really cool, right? It can be a big vibe, and it can be like a means to kind of like create connection to people who are like lower class and make it so that the whiteness isn't just like a...
What do you think about white trash just being like, I think being a synonym for like blackness?
That I've never heard before.
You never heard about that?
That's really interesting.
Because really, some people, they say like, talk like a southern accent. That's most black people do. We get our accent from that, like, and then the poverty is like that's like two things like just tie black people to for some reason.
Totally. That's
So then boom. You never heard about that? Those two connections?
I'm surprised that I never even made that connection, to be honest with you. But I can definitely see why people would do that. But I think like that's just another one of those like government top-down policy things, right? I think that's like trying to confuse people, right? It's trying to use class and race simultaneously, so that there's just like more segments, right? Because if you said like white trash is like equated to blackness, that means that they're like the same experience, but we're racializing it, right? And there's probably like nuanced differences, right? Because you're not going to get the same treatment as somebody who's white living in a trailer park versus somebody who's black living in a trailer park. But at the end of the day, it's just another way to create a division. It's just another way to push people apart and to like, you know, like dig in. So it's like, I feel like creating the term white trash just makes an avenue for white people to like act in this regard and how people are referencing it black. And then like create even more of a problem around it, because now you have the segregation between the people who are white trash and the people who are like in the same situation that happen to be black. And you have the classism element. So it's just, it creates like so much fractalized division that like you're so busy trying to define what you are that you're just circling the square.
Okay, I got 3 more questions in.
Yeah.
I was going 2 questions out, but now I got this last question.
You go.
So basically, it was a thing. I want to ask this from a white dude perspective. Have you ever seen this? So basically, it was a thing where it was like black dude, older black dude. He was like, "What? We can fuck white bitches?" He's like, "Yeah, we can fuck like any other bitches. They love us."
Yeah.
He's like, "But do you know what type you get?" And then he was like, "You get the type that they don't like." And then it was like, what? Is that like a thing?
Right.
So then I want to ask you as a white dude, do you see like, cause like just how I said the gender shit,
Yeah,
we can't scale y'all like that. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
totally.
Like
yeah.
if we scale y'all on our measurements, like, oh, these the cool ones, these the dude. We
Yeah.
don't scale y'all, we got different measurements.
Totally.
So then I want to ask you that. So
Yeah, so
do black dudes get like the worst, like the shitty white woman, like even like famous wise? Do you see like I really want to ask this.
immediately Kanye comes to mind, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, do we get like the shitty ones, or do we get like the like? Have you ever seen a black dude like, oh, the one, like, oh, the white girl, whatever one?
I
That
think
is for y'all?
that that's probably like a case by case thing. I probably have to look at like numbers and data and shit like that, if that even exists, or like just maybe talk more with people at parties and shit like that.
Nah, nigga, got him. we got. I think nah, nigga, I guess he was right. Damn.
But I think what happens with that is like that becomes like a rhetoric thing. That becomes a tool, because then you've got even more division, right? Because then you've got like white girls classifying themselves and like people classifying them from the black perspective, right? And it creates this new division that exists, which, you know, could be good, could be bad. It probably will be both. I think the good things that happen are like it creates the conversation of like what causes attraction between like races in that manner, and like what the driving forces of a relationship become. But
So you never seen like a black dude you don't think most black dudes only get white trash? That was the thing that the older dude was telling me. He's like, most black dudes, they only get white trash. They don't get like secondhand wealthy, like rich, like, oh, my dad, yeah, he has that Porsche, yeah, he has that. We just don't drive it. It's just like they don't get those type of white girls. That was the thing you were trying to say.
I've seen like rich white girls end up with dudes from the city. I think Detroit's a big spot for it, and I think Atlanta's a big spot for it.
And you gotta know what I'm saying. I'm saying black,
Yes, big time. Yes,
like not.
Actually, I know what you mean. They didn't assimilate. They
Yeah.
didn't button up and shit.
You know.
So I think right now and in the past 10 years, that's changed drastically, right? I think like in the public eye and like in most spaces, that's no longer true, but I think it definitely kind of used to be true. I think in the same way that like you kind of see like black sheep, like kids who like don't fit into their family, like jumping to other cultures because what else can you do, you know? Like if you're like me and my family don't have the best relationship, I'm very different from them, and like that might inform why I'm involved with other cultures outside of just white people. So I think that might be why that trope exists. That might be why people have that like stereotype, is because it's usually like somebody who just went through like a bunch of drama and trauma and shit like with their family, so they probably aren't in the best headspace when they jump ship, if you will, and like end up socializing with other cultures. But I think nowadays that's super not true, because I have friends friends who've been homeless, friends who are homeless, then friends who've got millions of dollars in the bank, and like honestly, they can connect in more meaningful ways than I've seen in my life recently. And I've seen a lot of like bridging that gap happening. So I think like maybe like in the 90s and like the early 2000s, that was very true. But I think nowadays people are just like very self-aware a lot of the time. And so as long as like you know like what you want out of a person, it doesn't really matter how they look. But that's not true for everybody, obviously, for sure. I think there's just like a growing number of people who can operate like that.
Let me ask you this, because I know I'm going to ask a whole bunch of people this. You're just going to be in a compilation. It's going to be so this is my plan. I'm going to go to Toronto. I'm going to ask black people how do they feel, if they black or not. And I'm going to go to Florida. There's a lot of black Latinos out there, like Haitians, black Latinos, Dominican Republicans, darker than me.
Puerto Rican.
They say they like, they say they, but they don't say they me. They don't say me at all.
Right.
So then, boom. I just wanted to ask them, and I'm going to go to New York, too. And then, because, like, they black people, they Latinos use the N-word out there and shit like that. So then I just wanted to ask that question. So what classifies a person as black today? And what do you see, like, black people as a present, like, doing today? What classifies somebody as black today?
That's a great question. That's super phenomenal. I think it just, at the end of the day, I think it actually just has to do with, like, how you're treated based on how you appear. But, I mean, it's not 100% for me to define, but what I notice, I think, is just, like, if you struggle the same struggle, that's all that really matters. And we just use black and white to define that. Like, white is privilege and black is oppression. And so I feel like it just depends on, like how you act, how you talk, how you interact with your community, if you can kind of, like, actually engage in meaningful ways, or if you're just, like, you know, trying to, like, if you're trying to look good, if you're trying to, like, DEI your friends, you know, instead of actually make friends.
I promise you, I had a in Detroit summer camp. Never forget this moment. It was a dude. He was white like you.
Real white.
African.
Whoa.
So then, is he black?
Shit. Well, I guess I could use that as a segue to something else I've heard. When I, like, do organizing work, there's this one dude I know specifically, and when he speaks, he says that when he refers to, like, blackness, he says African. He doesn't even say African American, because in his opinion, a lot of the reason that people who are African are in America is not by choice, right? So, like, putting that as their identity, to him, doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I think maybe, like, blackness is purposefully ambiguous so that people could be confused about it, so that this conversation doesn't have, like, a true answer. And so I kind of, my personal, like, experience, my personal opinion is I kind of like how he talks about it, because when he says he's African, he's talking about, like, that's where, like, my, like, people come from, that's where I'm from, you know, that's where, like, my lineage comes from. And so, like, if I was talking about my lineage, I would be, like, European or Polish, you know. And that would be my denomination. Yeah, I wouldn't even be, like, white if I talked about myself. I would be, European. Big time.
That's the only thing I think about. Like, I'm a history nerd. I just know history, Poland, that one day.
Germany was coming up for Poland. Russia was coming for Lithuania.
Yeah, you feel that? Your people feel that?
Like, so if I may talk a little bit about my Polish side of my family.
They feel it to this day. Like people be saying, like, black people shit. Like, black people, your ancestors fought my grandma. Like, that's how I be looking at this shit. Like,
I knew her.
You like my grandma? Like, my grandma's still alive. She's kicking everything. She's like, yeah, I remember. Yeah, they did not want nobody to go to school, that school specifically.
Right.
And then just like she'll just know that shit.
Yeah, that's like why I was talking about Malcolm X's dad, because it's so recent and it just happened, and it's the same thing. People talk about it like it was 1,000 years ago. But my grandma
older than 60s. Like, yeah, she probably knew that shit.
She saw it. She probably lived it.
Yeah, so then that's why I'm like she seen that little black girl. She from Alabama. She seen that black girl go to that first black girl.
Wow.
She seen that first black girl go to that school.
That's gnarly as hell. Those fucking crowds. I see pictures of that right now, and the faces that the people have.
She's like, bitch, I live that shit. And I was like, damn. I guess that shit is recent as fuck.
That's hard.
They try to make this shit seem like it was like
forever ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So in yours, do you still feel it like that? Like in Poland? Like, yeah, I remember. Like, do you still got like people? Yeah, I don't fuck with them Germans.
Honestly, yeah. So my Polish side of my family, it's like 100% Polish, right? I'm 50-50 with a lot of different Euro countries because of my mom's side. But my Busha, her parents moved here in like the 1900s, like that 10-year period, like 1900 to 1910 is when they migrated over here. And when my great-grandpa got off the boat, our last name became Mac because our name was probably a lot longer and harder to pronounce. But we were broke and we came over on a ship with like thousands of people. So they
Wait,
saw
you Jewish?
Oh. I was raised like Catholic. So I'm like Catholic Polish, which is a very specific kind, you know. It was very Jewish as well, but I was a Catholic. Now I'm just kind of whatever. Now I just like know of God and just live my life, but I don't really do any spiritual practicing. But when he got off the boat, they looked at his last name and it was like probably like Mashwinsky or some shit like that, and they were just like, I'm not saying that, Mac, next. So yeah, I would say we still feel it a little bit just because that my whole identity is surrounded behind being reduced, you know. My whole identity for my whole life is centered around being
You don't think about getting that bitch back, changing your last name? Like when you get
if
married?
I could find out what it was.
Damn, Mac on snip here, snip, and just snip, and just snip. Mac snip, and just snip. God damn.
Yeah. I wanted to change it to, which is surprising, but the German side of my family's last name is just cool as fuck.
German?
Yeah, I'm also Germanic and probably like Dutch, but just in that area. They call it Germanic Europe on Ancestry.com. But that country kind of did a whole bunch of random shit, so I don't know like the actual logistics of what my family is.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, Europe is the only place I do not want to go to. Like, I ain't gonna hold you.
Especially not now.
Like, I don't want to go to, like, at all. Like that's like I'm good. They're like, but there's so much sightseeing. And like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, but it's probably gonna be weird and like potentially dangerous.
It's just to me only I see it's just like dead bodies on, like I see them dead bodies on bodies, and I just see they wars and stuff like that, like over the years. Not even World War. I'm talking about like just like even before that, medieval times. Like you got all these people. Like to me, like no offense.
See it. No, I see it.
Little dick energy. Like you fighting over these little fucking lines, like in this little fucking spot. I just like, what the fuck are y'all fought over this little shit?
Seriously.
And then it's like, so this spot took over this spot, so they just start speaking their language, and then they got that shit back, and then now they do this now, and then it's just.
We're still doing that over here. The fucking Michigan versus like Ohio. We fought Minnesota for the UP. Like we had a war for the UP with another state.
Oh, that was like back then. Like the one thing I think the only reason the states is winning is we not fighting with each other like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Like so, like Michigan, you don't gotta worry about Michigan. We don't do little dick shit. Michigan ain't gonna really fight Ohio. True. And then we ain't finna go to war. No, Poland might actually go to war with this one and this one. They not united at all. Like we are united as fuck over here.
That's true. The last time that fucking Poland was united was when Lithuania and them combined because Russia kept fucking with them and Germany kept fucking with them. So we're like, we gotta defend ourselves. And then as soon as the war was over, they split back into two countries.
Yeah, that's too much shit for me. I ain't gonna hold you.
The same here.
All right, so we got over the black person. Future. What do you see the future for black people? Solutions, because they know it's a lot of problems. Black people, what do you see the future going to? Better, worse? What do you see?
I already see it as better from my very limited point of view. I think that the future holds a lot of healing and a lot of potential to like reorganize the systems that we already have going. I think we're seeing a lot of that right now, kind of getting a little bit more access to like every like resource that's needed. And I feel like as that community becomes more and more robust over the next 20 years, then it's going to just end up benefiting everybody. And a lot of the tensions that have existed in this country will finally go away because we realize it's not even our fight. This is the fight that other people were fighting and they died. And then the people who are still fighting it, it'll become very obvious. You know, it'll become super obvious who's just kind of like beating a dead horse. And we can maybe like ostracize them and make it so that they don't have access or control the resources, and then we can reallocate based on that, because there's a lot of people here that are too well off for their own good and they are fighting tooth and nail to keep it that way, and as soon as they stop succeeding, which I think is happening less and less and less in modern times, the more that kind of that tension will dissipate and just that resources will dissipate and allocate themselves to the greater, mass of people, And I think that the black struggle has been instrumental in that, especially in America. And I think that it's only going to get better from here on out. That's my hope. But I also think that there's a lot of evidence behind that as well.
Cool. Last question. Drake black?
Was it?
Is Drake black?
That's a hard question. I think that he's probably like black and white because of the way he behaves, but also where he came from. You know what I'm saying?
Because of the way he
Who he
behaves.
decides to associate with. I don't know a ton about him. I probably have to do a lot more research. But I mean, like,
Shit, you
that's
don't listen
how
to
he
Drake? Who you listen to?
identifies. When it comes to rap, I like Pink Seafood the
Period.
best.
Pink Seafood?
Yeah, Pink Seafood. He's from Cincinnati. He lives in Compton now.
Okay, you put me on some shit.
You'd really like it. Look up Gumbo by him. It's like one of the best albums I've ever heard in my life.
All right, I'm going to look back on it. Anybody else?
I like the Meters a lot. They're like old school funk band. You ever heard of the Aquatics at all? With an E. They're really cool. They're like a bunch of 16-year-olds from Ohio, I think, that made one of the best albums ever. And then like non-black music that I listen to is just like honestly like anything. I don't really try to listen to one thing or another. I just end up liking a couple artists and like a couple genres. I listen to like this band called like Urika Spacek. They're from England, which I don't really like England at all, but they're like kind of old school rockers and they got a really cool sound. And then like listen to some punk music too. It's this band called Drool I really like. I think they're from Atlanta if I'm not mistaken. And they're like a skate punk band. They're really awesome. You're messing with Dark Side.